Q. Skills for Success. Listening and Speaking Level 5. Published and copyrighted by Oxford University Press, 2011. CD2. Unit 4. Deception. The Q Classroom. Page 77.
Unit 4 is about deception, and the unit question is, can the eyes deceive the mind? Let's start with our own experience. What are some common examples of the eyes deceiving the mind?
The first things that come to my mind are those pictures with a hidden image in them. When you first look at them, your eyes tell you that it's just a repetitive pattern, but there are actually differences in the pattern that show up as a hidden image when you look at it for a while.
Those things drive me crazy. I can never see the picture. But to answer the question, I'd say that 3D movies are a very common example of the eyes deceiving the mind. What looks like 3D is really just the same image being shown from different angles.
Good point. What are some other examples of the eyes deceiving the mind? Felix?
Well, to take off from what Marcus said, we use visual deception all the time. For example, we put mirrors in rooms to make them look bigger, or we wear vertical stripes to make ourselves look thinner. Even animal camouflage is an example of the eyes deceiving the mind. The animal is there, but you don't see it because its patterns and colors match the background.
That's true. Are there other examples of the eyes deceiving the mind? Does it happen in ways we don't plan? What do you think, Una?
When people are in the desert, they sometimes see pools of water. I forgot what that's called.
A mirage. Yes, people often see mirages in the heat, on highways too.
And on the ocean.
That's right. People think they see land when there is no land there at all. So we have lots of examples of the eyes deceiving the mind, and we'll see more as we continue with this unit.
Listening 1. Wild Survivors. Listen for main ideas. Page 81.
In the ruthless world of survival, the battle for life and death takes on infinite forms. The endless struggle to eat and avoid being eaten has created weapon and defense systems that are continuously changing. The balance of power in nature is continually shifting. Sometimes it favors the hunter, and sometimes the hunted. Those that are best at the game escape from the very jaws of death. Adapting is necessary for survival. As conditions change, availability of food and water, temperatures, the presence of predators, both animal and human, animals must change to meet the challenges or die. Both weather and landscape play a part in how animals adapt. Those that live must be well suited to the demands of the environment. For example, the brown feathers of the ptarmigan, a bird about the size of a pigeon that lives in Europe and North America, make it almost invisible to predators. But the feathers serve another purpose as well. They protect the bird from the extreme cold by keeping its body heat next to its body, as well as keeping the cold air out. The ptarmigan also grows long white feathers on its feet for the winter, which act like built-in snowshoes. Undoubtedly, the feathers also provide effective camouflage, a disguise that helps the ptarmigan hide from predators by matching the color of its environment. When the snow disappears, so too do the white winter feathers of the ptarmigan. Its summer outfit, speckled gray and brown feathers, is well designed to suit the environment that is now free of snow. The young ptarmigans are in special need of good camouflage, since they cannot fly as well as the adults. They must protect themselves from predators by crouching and hiding among the rocks, moss, and wildflowers. Camouflage is virtually all the protection they have in the rocky landscape of the Pacific Northwest. An even more elaborate survival system is found among the leaves of the oak tree, home to a variety of birds and a small, unimpressive-looking moth. In the springtime, The moth lays its eggs on the underside of the leaves, where they are less likely to be found by any hungry passers-by. When the caterpillars hatch, they begin a dangerous journey. Those that survive make straight for the oak tree's flowers. As they feed hungrily upon the flowers, they absorb the chemicals within them. This triggers a startling transformation. Quite literally, the caterpillar is what it eats. It can mimic the flowers superbly, even imitating the movement of the flowers in the spring breeze. Camouflage allows many of the caterpillars to mature safe from predatory birds. But the story doesn't stop there. In the summer, another set of caterpillars is hatched. By now, the flowers have fallen and the caterpillars feed on the leaves instead. But there are different chemicals within the leaves now that set off a completely different reaction. This time, the caterpillars take on the appearance of the oak twigs rather than the flowers. To its great advantage, the same species has shown a striking capacity for variation. Adaptations can be remarkably specific to the environment. A praying mantis looks dangerously out of place on the forest floor. Easy pickings for any nearby predators. But a disappearing act takes place when the mantis reaches the flowers of the Asian orchid. So closely does it resemble its surroundings that the other insects sometimes search for nectar on its body. Those that do may pay for their mistake with their lives. The unbroken reaches of the desert seem to offer little in the way of protection or places to hide. Even here, though, natural selection has resulted in some very effective adaptations. The desert snake can transform itself from obvious to almost invisible in the sand, where it then hides in wait for potential prey. A lizard is no match at all for the deception of the snake. The sandy bottom of the ocean floor can also hide its inhabitants. The Caribbean flounder, a fish whose flat body is the color of the ocean floor, makes good use of the seabed to hide from view. Only its eyes are left exposed to sight a likely meal. Its looks may be unusual, but they work superbly in these surroundings. The pressure of natural selection, or survival of the fittest, is an irresistible force shaping all of nature. Those individuals who live to reproduce pass on their useful traits to succeeding generations. This is the essence of adaptation. As a general rule, the more closely you match your environment, the better your chances are of surviving. The genetic combinations that result in camouflage like this, as well as the behaviors passed on from parents to offspring by example, are the product of an unknowable number of hits and misses. Successful techniques and features live on in future generations, and unsuccessful ones necessarily pass away. It is one of the true miracles of nature.
Listen for details. Page 81. Listen again to listen for main ideas. Listening skill. Recognizing appositives that explain. Page 82.
The chameleon, a type of lizard, changes its skin color to match its background. The animal most famous for its ability to camouflage itself is the chameleon, a type of lizard. Chameleons are oviparous, or egg-laying animals.
Listening skill activity, page 83. 1.
Adapting is necessary for survival. As conditions change, availability of food and water, temperatures, the presence of predators, both animal and human, animals must change to meet the challenges or die.
2.
Both weather and landscape play a part in how animals adapt. Those that live must be well suited to the demands of the environment. For example, the brown feathers of the ptarmigan, a bird about the size of a pigeon that lives in Europe and North America, make it almost invisible to predators.
3.
The ptarmigan also grows long white feathers on its feet for the winter. which act like built-in snowshoes. Undoubtedly, the feathers also provide effective camouflage, a disguise that helps the ptarmigan hide from predators by matching the color of its environment.
4.
When the snow disappears, so too do the white winter feathers of the ptarmigan. Its summer outfit, speckled gray and brown feathers, is well designed to suit the environment that is now free of snow.
5.
The sandy bottom of the ocean floor can also hide its inhabitants. The Caribbean flounder, a fish whose flat body is the color of the ocean floor, makes good use of the seabed to hide from view.
Listening 2. Magic and the Mind. Listen for main ideas. Page 85.
Magic is one of the oldest art forms around, and it's based on fooling the human mind, which is why some scientists in Britain and Canada are interested in magic. They wrote an article about it for the journal Trends in Cognitive Sciences. In it, they say that by studying the tricks used by magicians, scientists could gain a deeper understanding of human perception. Gustav Kuhn is one of the co-authors. He's a psychologist and a practicing magician, and he's at the University of Durham in England. Now, in your study, you argue that the time has come to create a science of magic. What exactly do you mean by that?
Most of you will have experienced magicians, for example, making objects magically disappear. Now, these kinds of tricks don't rely on supernatural powers. What the magician is really doing is utilizing a fairly wide range of techniques to manipulate your perception. Now, as you mentioned in your introduction, magic is a very old art form, and magicians have, through generations of practicing this art, have accumulated vast amounts of experience and knowledge about how these principles work. Now, many of these principles are very similar to the kind of phenomena that are typically studied by psychologists. And what we've been trying to do is kind of to find this link between magic and science. In other words, what we're trying to do is sort of try to tap into some of this experience by the magicians and sort of try to understand the scientific foundation of some of these techniques. And hopefully this will actually then lead towards sort of a science of magic.
Right, and what specific techniques of the magic trade are you talking about?
There's a wide variety. In this paper, we've been looking at 3 different techniques, namely misdirection, illusions, and forcing.
Maybe you can kind of just quickly explain what each of those means.
So misdirection relates to the magician's ability to prevent you from seeing certain things happen. Now, magicians will typically distract your attention so that you don't see what's happening. And work in visual sciences has shown that even though when you're looking around the room around you, you feel that you're aware of everything that's going on. However, our representation of this world is much more limited. And what it basically means is that unless you really specifically attend to an object or an event, you don't necessarily see it. Now, whilst this has taken the scientific community by surprise, magicians have been aware of this for a long time, and this is how they can use misdirection to basically distract your attention away from what they want to hide, and so that means you don't see it. Then there's illusions. Now, much of what we actually perceive is related to how we believe the world to be and is based on our expectations about the world, rather than what's actually really out there. So that means our perception of the world is actually fairly subjective. Now again, magicians, they can manipulate your expectations so as to make you perceive things that have not necessarily taken place.
And then finally there's forcing. What is forcing?
In everyday life, we feel that most of the decisions that we make are sort of fairly free. We sort of feel got like free will. However, again, magicians sort of developed techniques that can actually influence your choice, and often you're not actually aware of how your choice has been influenced, and that's known as forcing.
Now, your study shows that cognitive science and psychology can learn a lot from what magicians do, but can magicians go out and buy a psychology book and kind of become better magicians?
I think so. I mean, I guess this is sort of what we're hoping to do as well. So whilst I think scientists can learn a lot from magicians, magicians also have sort of can learn quite a bit.
And yet successful magic also depends on secrecy, so suddenly you're giving away all these secrets.
Well, we're sort of trying to make a big point that we're not actually giving away any of the secrets. So our aim is to make use of the techniques rather than the secrets. And even though you know that these techniques are in place, when you're actually seeing a magic performance, this will probably not help you work out how the trick is actually done.
Gustav Kuhn is a psychologist and a practicing magician. He's part of a research team from Durham University and the University of British Columbia that has studied the science of magic. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
You'll find examples of some of the tricks that Gustav Kuhn used in his research at theworld.org.
Listen for details. Page 86. Listen again to listen for main ideas. Grammar. Relative clauses. A. Page 92. 1.
Mixing up the knives that cut the boxes during a magic show is dangerous.
2.
A magician from France whom we saw perform last week astonished us with every trick in the book.
3.
The elephant that walked across the stage was not even noticed by the audience.
4.
The sounds of nature that we thought we heard were really radios.
5.
The performer pulled out a rabbit whose ears were bigger than the hat.
6.
Many magic tricks are actually pretty easy for a beginner to learn, which surprised me.
Pronunciation. Stress shifts with suffixes. Page 93. 1.
Retire, retiree.
China, Chinese.
Cash, cashier.
2.
Profession, professional.
Equip, equipment.
Effective, effectiveness.
Subjective, subjectively.
3.
Magic, magician.
Psychology, psychological.
4.
Vocab, vocabulary.
Certify, certificate.
Location, localize.
A. Page 94. 1. A.
Manipulate.
B.
Manipulation.
2. A.
Alternate.
B.
Alternative.
3. A.
Deceive.
B.
Deception.
4. A.
Image.
B.
Imaginary.
5. A.
Technique.
B.
Technically.
6. A.
Mystery.
B.
Mysterious.
7. A.
Popular.
B.
Popularity.
8. A.
Psychology.
B.
Psychological.
9. A.
Terrify.
B.
Terrific.
10. A.
Visual.
B.
Visualize.
Speaking skill. Clarifying information. Page 95.
Now, in your study, you argue that the time has come to create a science of magic. What exactly do you mean by that?
Unit 5. Global Cooperation. The Q Classroom. Page 101.
It's time again for us to talk about the unit question. For Unit 5, it's what does it mean to be a global citizen? Marcus, why don't you start us off today?
Global citizens are people who see themselves as citizens of the world, not just of their own country or community.
I think that's a good definition. So, what are some examples of seeing yourself as a citizen of the world? How does that affect your behavior? Sophie?
One thing a global citizen does is protect the environment. The energy we waste, the trash we produce, and the pollution we cause can affect people in far-off places. If you're a global citizen, you're concerned about that, and you try not to be wasteful.
Okay. Una, what do you think? What does it mean to be a global citizen?
It means we have to care about what happens to people in less fortunate countries. We do things to help them.
Can you give me an example?
Mostly by sending money, but some people join volunteer corps and go to other countries to help out.
That's true. What do you say, Felix? What does it mean to be a global citizen?
I think we are all global citizens, whether we want to be or not. As Sophie said, how we live affects other people in other places, not just in terms of how we take care of the environment, but also in terms of how we do business. Many corporations these days manufacture things all over the world, and we need to make sure they're acting responsibly no matter where they are. It's easier to just buy cheap stuff without thinking about it, but we should really pay attention to who we do business with. That's one way to be a better global citizen.
Listening 1. The campaign to humanize the coffee trade. Listen for main ideas. Page 105.
Be honest. When you drop by your local coffee house...
Hi, how are you?
Do you ever think about the farmers who grew that coffee thousands of miles away?
I need two venti mocha frappuccinos with whipped cream.
When you pay the bill...
$8.29.
Do you ever wonder how much of this money will the coffee farmers and their families actually get?
What can I get for you?
An international network of activists wants you to start thinking about it because they say they've figured out a simple way that you can affect the global economy and transform the lives of farmers. Look for coffee with a special label marked Fair Trade. With Part 3 in our special report, here's American Radio Works correspondent Daniel Zwerdling.
Let's go right to coffee country. Let's head to the mountains of Guatemala. They grow some of the best coffee you can drink. It's late afternoon. The sun's already sinking behind a peak, and farmers are shuffling back down the slopes after a whole day picking beans. Some lead pack horses. They're mangy animals. You can count every single rib. The farmers tie the reins to trees next to the village warehouse, and they unload their burlap sacks. A lot of farmers can't afford a horse. One man staggering down the dirt path. He's lugging more than 50 pounds of coffee on his own back. My interpreter translates.
Sometimes we do 100 pounds or more. You come here sweating, really sweating.
You don't have to be an economist to see that growing coffee here doesn't buy much of a life. Picture the farmers' homes on the hillsides. They're shacks. The floors are bare dirt. There's no running water or electricity. The outside walls are thin wooden planks, and it gets cold here up in the mountains. The world's coffee prices go up and down, depending partly on supply and demand and speculation by big investors. But these farmers are stuck in poverty. They sell their beans to local businessmen, whom they derisively call coyotes. And the coyotes pay them less than 50 cents per pound. At that price, the farmers can barely make a few $100s a year.
Entonces, porque para producir un quintal de café sale caro.
I mean, to produce
Lleva mucho trabajo,
it's expensive. It's a lot of work, and sometimes we can't even cover costs.
Could I ask all of you something? Do you know how much somebody like me pays for your coffee when I go to my local coffee shop in Washington, D.C.?
No lo sabemos.
No, we don't know.
So I tell them that foreign stores typically sell Guatemalan coffee for at least $9 per pound, compared to the 50 cents they get for growing it. And the farmers just stand there, looking puzzled. Then one of them pulls a calculator out of his pocket. It's so dirty and scratched you can hardly see through the screen, and the interpreter helps him convert dollars into local quetzales. The farmers gasp when they hear the price.
They're just amazed at how much a consumer pays for it, and they keep just saying 6,600 something quetzales. It's like they're repeating it over and over again. It's an enormous difference from what they actually get. It's a huge amount of money.
These farmers are the poorest and most powerless part of the global coffee trade, and it's a massive industry. The world trades more coffee than any commodity except petroleum and illegal drugs. But the farmers say they don't know what happens to their beans once they sell them to the coyote. They don't realize that he sells them to a processor, then the processor might sell them to an exporter. The exporter ships the beans to an importer in another country like the United States. The importer sells them to a roaster. The roaster sells them to a coffee shop, which sells the coffee to you. And everybody makes a healthy profit along the way, except the small farmers who grow it. Now, activists have devised a cure that they call the fair trade system. They say it can help farmers make more money than ever before and flex some power over their lives. On a recent morning, we joined one of the system's organizers, a man named Guillermo Denaux. He's heading to a meeting with some fair trade farmers to see how things are going. And that means that his four-wheel drive car is straining to climb an insane path next to a cliff way up in Guatemala's mountains.
It's the end of the world. There is no more village further away. It's impossible.
A group of European activists founded Fair Trade in the late 1980s. The program spread to the United States a few years ago. And here's how it works. First, they've signed up roughly 300 groups of coffee farmers from Indonesia to Peru. They'll only sign up small family farmers who market their coffee together in community co-ops. No corporate plantations allowed. Second, they figured out how much money a typical farmer needs to support a family of 5. Decent food, clothes, kids in school, health care. And then the system basically guarantees that the farmers can sell their coffee for enough money per pound to achieve that. How? Well, the companies that sell fair trade coffee to you at your local cafe buy it almost directly from the farmers who grow it. Denaux says the network cuts out the middlemen who traditionally siphon off farmers' profits.
Their whole life they depended on the intermediaries. So once you can become independent of those intermediaries, for them it's very important.
Still, the Fair Trade Network can't raise all the money that farmers need just by cutting out middlemen. Consumers have to help too. You pay at least 10% extra for fair trade brands.
Listen for details. Page 105. Listen again to listen for main ideas. Listening skill. Organizing notes with a T-chart. Page 107.
These farmers are the poorest and most powerless part of the global coffee trade, and it's a massive industry. The world trades more coffee than any commodity except petroleum and illegal drugs. But the farmers say they don't know what happens to their beans once they sell them to the coyote. They don't realize that he sells them to a processor, then the processor might sell them to an exporter. The exporter ships the beans to an importer in another country like the United States. The importer sells them to a roaster. The roaster sells them to a coffee shop, which sells the coffee to you. And everybody makes a healthy profit along the way, except the small farmers who grow it. Now, activists have devised a cure that they call the fair trade system. They say it can help farmers make more money than ever before and flex some power over their lives.
Listening skill activity, page 108. 1.
The program on fair trade coffee shows how activists can help transform an industry. I wonder if there are any other fair trade products that can make a difference and help people out of poverty.
Sure. Check out this website for the Global Exchange. They say that if people want to help, they can buy fair trade jewelry, clothing, tea, and chocolate.
That's great. If consumers buy more fair trade products, Farmers and local artisans can be guaranteed fair wages and find sustainable ways to produce their products.
2.
I watched a TV program last night about the water crisis in Africa.
Oh, I wanted to see that. It's unbelievable that water is such a precious commodity in so many parts of the world. And why don't more people care about this problem?
The program talked about that. It explained how one group, the World Water Organization, is gathering professionals to explore ways to protect water around the world. Together, they're finding ways to solve the crisis.
3.
Hey, have any movie stars started organizations to address global concerns?
Yes, actually. The actor Leonardo DiCaprio started the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation.
What does it do?
They're working to expand public awareness of environmental issues.
Has the organization really had an impact on any problems such as pollution?
They've worked a lot on the pollution problem. They're contributing to a grassroots campaign, an effort by ordinary people to end the use of plastic bags around the world. And their website suggests a lot of ways we can reduce our plastic bag consumption.
4.
Hi, I'm collecting money for an organization called the Disaster Relief Group. Do you want to make a donation?
I don't know. I've never heard of that organization. I don't usually give money to relief organizations because I'm never sure if my money is really going to make a difference.
Yeah, that's been a problem for this organization. They're pretty new and they're small, so a lot of people don't know about them or trust them yet. Believe me, it's been a challenge raising money for them. But they're trying to improve their outreach and communications through their website.
Oh, really?
Yes. If you go to disasterreliefgroup.org, you'll see newsletters, blogs from volunteers, and pictures of all the work they're doing all over the world. You'll also see exactly how much money they've raised for victims of natural disasters and where that money goes.
Listening to the UN Global Compact. Listen for main ideas. Page 111.
In 1989, the Exxon Valdez sank off the coast of Alaska, spilling 11 million gallons or 125 Olympic swimming pools worth of crude oil into the water, polluting 1,300 miles of coastline. The disaster, which incurred the world's biggest ever corporate fine of $5 billion, has become a byword in the media for corporate irresponsibility. Since then, business has gone global as never before, with foreign direct investment tripling to more than $1 trillion. But as companies extend their reach, particularly into emerging economies with weaker regulations, the need for responsible business practice is greater than ever before.
Shame on the gap! Shame on the gap!
Despite increasing scrutiny from consumers and NGOs, companies are still regularly accused of human rights abuses, poor working practices, and environmental crimes. In 2000, the United Nations offered a solution to this growing problem, the UN Global Compact, which asked businesses to take direct responsibility for their actions. Participating companies follow the Global Compact's 10 principles, which broadly safeguard human rights, labour standards, the environment, and fight corruption in what could be described as a United Nations of companies.
Initially, we started off with a moral call. Increasingly, over the last couple of years, the business case for engagement has become clearer.
By acting responsibly, companies can gain the confidence of investors, who are increasingly backing businesses that successfully manage their environmental and social impact. It's said that reputation and intangible assets determine up to 70% of the company's market value.
Today, Andrew Fastow, the Chief Financial Officer of Enron, has pled guilty, has admitted his responsibility, his role in the collapse of Enron.
When Enron's irregular accounting practices were revealed in 2001, its share price plummeted from more than $90 to less than 50 cents. Enron's tattered reputation eventually bankrupted the company. On the flip side, a good reputation can increase sales. A 2007 report showed that household expenditure on ethical goods and services in the UK had almost doubled in 5 years. Businesses waking up to the fact that the commercial potential of a responsible business can be exploited.
Business leaders recognize that being proactive on these issues has a premium. It allows them to attract skilled people. They also recognize new opportunities because if you're better connected on the social agenda, you spot market needs much better.
And attitudes do seem to be changing. A 2007 McKinsey survey found that 90% of CEOs said they were doing more now to incorporate environmental, social and political issues into core strategies than they had done 5 years ago. The Global Compact started with 38 companies in 13 countries. Today it has 4,000 members in 120 countries.
The UN has put its own reputation.
However, the UN remains undaunted in its ambition to gather more companies under the Global Compact umbrella and to see them working together to tackle issues such as climate change. Progress so far has been significant, but this is only the beginning.
Together, we can achieve a new phase of globalization, one that creates inclusive and sustainable markets, builds development, and enhances international cooperation.
Listen for details. Page 112. Listen again to listen for main ideas. Pronunciation. Linking with final consonants. Page 117. 1.
They sold items made in Africa thousands of miles away.
2.
They want to take control of production.
3.
They grow some of the best coffee you can drink.
A. Page 118. 1.
An economist.
2.
Growing coffee.
3.
Special label.
4.
Stuck in poverty.
5.
Can't cover costs.
6.
Basic commodity.
7.
Household expenditure.
8.
Global expansion.
9.
Climate change.
10.
Environmental issues.
Unit 6. Personal Space. The Q Classroom. Page 125.
The Unit 6 question is, how do you make a space your own? Think about your room right now and your old room at home. What have you done to personalize those spaces? How about you, Una?
Pictures. I have pictures of my friends and family all over my room. I even have a big collage of pictures of good times with my high school friends. I like to have the faces of the people I love all around me.
I can certainly understand that. How about you, Felix? How do you make a space your own?
Music is very important to me, so any space of mine reflects that. Right now, I have my guitar hanging on the wall over my bed, where it's easy to reach. I also have a couple of posters of bands that I like. I have an amplifier and a decent stereo. At home, I have a big collection of CDs, and even some records and a turntable to play them on.
I haven't seen one of those for a while. What about you, Sophie?
I think that for me, the important thing about making a space my own is having things in it from home that I find comforting. For example, I have a wonderful soft quilt from my grandmother and a jewelry box that my dad made for me. I have a teddy bear on my bed that I've had since I was little. I guess I would say that I make a space my own by keeping my old things there.
What about you, Marcus? How do you make a space your own?
I'm not much of a decorator. I guess mostly I make a space my own by having a bunch of books there. I really like to read, and I never seem to have enough space for my books, so they're always lying all over the place. It drives my mom crazy when I'm at home.
I bet.
But I think it makes me feel at home having my books all around me.
Listening 1. Environmental Psychology. Listen for main ideas. Page 129.
Welcome to Lesson 15, Module 1 of Environmental Psychology. This week, I'll be introducing you to the field of environmental psychology, which is an area that studies the interrelationship between human behavior and environments. Environment refers to the natural environment, such as parks, natural resources, and outdoor settings, and built environments, or those structures and spaces which are constructed rather than those that occur naturally. Today, we'll be concentrating on characteristics of behavior and our connection to the space around us, focusing on gender, eye contact, and our need for privacy. We know that our need for space and our reactions to perceived invasion of our space are different for men and women. Males often object to face-to-face invasion. Sitting directly across from a male is often more offensive to them than sitting next to him. However, females often object to adjacent invasion. This has to do with competition versus affiliation goals. Males are expected to compete and women to affiliate. It's not necessary to affiliate with someone who is sitting across from you, but if someone sits next to you, it's often felt that you should engage in some affiliative behavior if you're a female. If you're a male, on the other hand, an adjacent invasion is not as important as a face-to-face or across-from-you invasion. When males and females try to approach one another, this can often lead to miscommunication. Females will often sit next to men in an adjacent seat, trying to make contact. But males do not even see this as approaching them because they're used to face-to-face invasion for people who matter. They typically ignore those who sit adjacent. Females have exactly the opposite view. What we know is that because these gender differences exist, you can also look at where people put their belongings. Belongings are often placed to avoid invasion. Females will often place their books or belongings to the side of them in a vacant seat in order to force people to have to make another kind of invasion. Males, on the other hand, will often put things across from them to indicate that they are taking up the space in front of them to prevent face-to-face invasion. In addition, we mark our territory with our belongings. For example, putting your jacket on the chair next to you, or putting your book on the table in the space that you feel belongs to you. In fact, 83% of students sit in the same seat all semester during a large lecture course. This is quite remarkable. There's nothing really about that seat specifically that makes it theirs, but we have this very territorial behavior ingrained in us. Equally important, we know that when males mark their territory, these markers are taken very seriously. If you look at desks, office space, and seating, you'll find that you behave in a very different way depending on to whom the office belongs. If you enter an office and you believe that a male is in that office, you will respect the desk and office space and seating arrangement. However, females' offices tend to be invaded and manipulated. That is, people will move things on the desk, play with objects on the desk, take up their office space, choose a different seat, move the chairs, and so on. In short, the gender of the owner affects our reaction to his or her territory. Another study that shows this reaction to how seriously we respect people's territories is called the jacket study. In this study, researchers put a clearly feminine or clearly masculine jacket on a chair when no one else was around. They then measured who would sit where and why. If it was a male jacket, people kept their distance. They sat several chairs away. However, if it was a female jacket, people often would move the jacket or turn it into lost and found. They didn't see it as a marker. We know that people engage in territorial behavior and males have larger territories than females. This begins when they are children. If you ask young children, who perhaps have just received a bike and have begun to explore the neighborhood using the sidewalks, you will find that the male children are often able to map out a much larger area of the place in which they play than females. Females typically draw perhaps their block or the houses across the street, but not much beyond that, whereas males will often draw 3 or 4 blocks, sometimes even a 6-block radius around their own home. You can also look at yourself in terms of whether or not you are territorial. Often, when you go to a restaurant and the server puts your plate in front of you, you can't help but touch it. This is why they always warn you the plate is hot, because they know your instinct is to touch the plate. The next time you eat out, try very hard not to touch the plate. It's very difficult to refrain from doing so, and now that I've made you aware, maybe you'll see just how territorial you really are. Eye contact is also an indicator of how we feel about personal space. One study of eye contact was conducted in post offices in 3 environments. Researchers looked in Parksford, a rural community, Bryn Mawr, a suburban town, and Philadelphia, a big city, and found that males and females within each community typically engage in eye contact at the same level. However, both genders were less likely to make eye contact in the city, moderately likely to do so in Bryn Mawr, and most likely to do so in Parksford. That is, in Parksford at the post office, you're expected to look at everyone, say hello even. However, in Philadelphia, you should not make very much eye contact, and only about 10% of people did. This is a way of maintaining space. In a rural area such as Parksford, you often feel that you have enough space and you aren't being threatened, so there's no need to be territorial. There is also no reason to feel like you might be invading someone else's territory. However, in Philadelphia, you can maintain a sense of privacy by not making eye contact with others. It's even considered polite, and when people do make eye contact, it's often thought to be strange, weird, or cause for concern. Another form of visual intrusion is the ability to see or be seen. This is usually seen as stressful. Restaurants or offices have been made to give a sense of privacy. However, even though they add barriers or other clear panels, this does not decrease visual intrusion or give anyone a sense of privacy. What we know about college students is that those who drop out are more likely to be students who had to live in dorms with roommates and use communal bathrooms and showers. So, if you need an argument for getting your own apartment, this could be it.
Listen for details. Page 131. Listen again to listen for main ideas. Listening skill. Recognizing organizational cues. A. Page 133.
In addition, we mark our territory with our belongings. For example, putting your jacket on the chair next to you, or putting your book on the table in the space that you feel belongs to you. In fact, 83% of students sit in the same seat all semester during a large lecture course. This is quite remarkable. There's nothing really about that seat specifically that makes it theirs, but we have this very territorial behavior ingrained in us. Equally important, we know that when males mark their territory, these markers are taken very seriously. If you look at desks, office space, and seating, you'll find that you behave in a very different way depending on to whom the office belongs. If you enter an office and you believe that a male is in that office, you will respect the desk and office space and seating arrangement. However, females' offices tend to be invaded and manipulated. That is, people will move things on the desk, play with objects on the desk, take up their office space, choose a different seat, move the chairs, and so on. In short, the gender of the owner affects our reaction to his or her territory.
B. Page 133. 1.
Students who decorate their dorm rooms tend to be happier at school. More importantly,
2.
We found teenagers who put a lot of surprising information on Facebook. Actually,
3.
There's a stereotype that men like to wash their cars every weekend. In addition,
4.
What kind of car we buy might reveal only a part of our personality. That is,
5.
so it is clear that gender plays a role in territorial behavior. Moving on.
6.
eye contact, visual intrusion, and territorial behavior are all evidence of ways humans interact with their surroundings. In conclusion,
Listening to. What your stuff says about you. Listen for main ideas. Page 135.
This is Talk of the Nation. I'm Neil Conan in Washington. The framed items on the wall of my office include my FCC third-class radio telephone operator's license from 1973 and the New York Times crossword puzzle from the day my name was used as a clue. There's a baseball on my desk, not signed or anything, just a baseball. Some toys sit on top of the speaker, a beach chair with a life preserver, a double-decker London bus, and a corkboard has family pictures, John F. Kennedy behind the wheel of a PT-109, and a postcard of Giant Stadium in New Jersey. Sam Gosling, are those few things enough to tell you anything about what kind of person I am?
Yeah, they certainly could tell us a lot. There's a lot of information, a lot of it not so obvious, but there's a lot of information in places like people's personal spaces, their offices or their living spaces.
Mm-hmm. And not just what they are, but the way they're arranged. For example, if the family pictures look out to the guest in the office or inward to the person who occupies it.
Yeah, it's really crucial to combine not only what they are, but how they've been placed. Because how they've been placed gives us good information on the psychological function that they serve. So, if we have photos of, say, our family and our beautiful spouse facing us, that shows us it's for our own benefit. It's what you might call a social snack, something we can snack on to make ourselves feel better over the day. If it's turned the other way, then it's more for the benefit of others. Which doesn't mean it's disingenuous. It may not be trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, but it informs the function that the photo serves.
Sam Gosling studies personality by looking at stuff. Stuff in offices, bedrooms, cars, and bathrooms. What's there and how it's arranged can provide clues about who we are and what's important to us. So we want you to call or email us and describe the room or the car you're in right now. What's on the wall or the desk? The videos and the CDs, the bumper stickers, your radio presets. Our phone number is 800-989-8255. Email us, talk@npr.org. You can also join the conversation on our blog at npr.org/blog-of-the-nation. Later on in the show, the romance and monotony involved in real archaeology. But first, Sam Gosling. He's an associate professor of psychology at the University of Texas in Austin. His new book is called Snoop, What Your Stuff Says About You. And he joins us today from the studios of member station KUT in Austin. Thanks very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
And your book is called Snoop, because that's what you propose to teach us what to do.
Yeah. Snooping around people's places, and I should say that I construe places very broadly. Not only our physical environments, but our oral environments too, such as our music collections, our virtual environments, like our personal home pages or our Facebook profile. So if people who want to call in want to talk more broadly about spaces, that would be fun too.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, to figure out what personality type, what stuff tells you about you, you have to know what personality types are to begin with. Introvert, extrovert are two that I guess everybody knows about.
That's right. And there are a number of ways of thinking about personality. And you can think about personality traits, which is what most research has done on it. And within that domain, there's the system known as the Big Five, or the five-factor framework, which talks about these different traits. As you say, introversion, extroversion is the main one, but there are other important ones too.
And how did you get interested in this? Are you a natural-born snoop?
Well, I think we're all natural-born snoops. And, I mean, some of us are more curious than others. Some of us will open the medicine cabinet when we go to a party, and some of us won't. But I think we all do because it's crucial. If you think who are the people who are... What is the element of the environment that's most important to us in terms of how well we get on in terms of professional lives and personal lives? It's other people. So I think we're naturally attuned to picking up on whatever information is out there, and there is a lot of information out there in people's spaces. So I think we all do it.
And so we size people up as soon as we see them, as soon as we shake their hand, for example.
Yeah, as soon as we shake their hand. And there's the handshaking has been a part of etiquette books for years and years and years. But it was only recently that it was really subjected to a really rigorous study. And there was a study done by Bill Chaplin in 2000, which looked at exactly that. It looked at what you can learn about someone from a handshake.
And sometimes it's interesting. You can learn something about it, but you can also come to a conclusion that's easily wrong.
Right. That's the point. Yes. For example, taking the example of handshaking, if somebody grips your hand firmly and looks you in the eye and smiles as they're doing it, then we form an overall positive impression of them. We form all kinds of positive things. Yet it turns out that the handshaking firmness is only a clue to some traits. So we are going beyond the evidence. And so it's really important to know which are valid clues and which ones are misleading.
And in the clip of tape that we heard at the beginning of the program and throughout your book, you use the example of Agatha Christie's great detective, Hercule Poirot.
That's right, because it's really important. You know, if I had one wish in the world, it would be that one clue told you something about a person. If you had a stuffed teddy on your bed, it meant something, you know. But the world is more complicated than that. So unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, because there are many reasons why we might have, say, a stuffed animal on our bed or something like that. And so really, you can't use a codebook approach where X means Y. What you have to do is you have to build up a picture, piece by piece, and sometimes you only have a very little piece, and you have to hold your view very tentatively. But that will guide your search for more information.
So, that postcard of Giant Stadium, well, it could tell you that I'm a Giants fan, which is true, but it could also tell you I grew up in New Jersey.
It could. Or it could tell you it might have sentimental meaning. Who is it from? Is it from somebody important? And so in order to resolve that, what we would do is we would look for other clues. So the baseball there would begin to help us resolve the meaning of the postcard itself. We might also see, well, these other items, the crossword puzzle, these other things which might modify the meaning which helps us resolve. Okay, so maybe recognition is important. We learn that you're somewhat sentimental, and that helps us clarify the meaning of each clue.
Listen for details. Page 136. Listen again to listen for main ideas. Pronunciation. Thought groups. Page 142.
The psychologist, said the lecturer, tries to understand social behavior. The psychologist said,
The lecturer tries to understand social behavior.
A. Page 142.
That's right, because it's really important. You know, if I had one wish in the world, it would be that one clue told you something about a person. If you had a stuffed teddy on your bed, it meant something, you know. But the world is more complicated than that. So unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, because there are many reasons why we might have, say, a stuffed animal on our bed or something like that. And so really, you can't use a codebook approach where X means Y. What you have to do is you have to build up a picture, piece by piece. And sometimes you only have a very little piece, and you have to hold your view very tentatively. But that will guide your search for more information.
Unit assignment. Consider the ideas. Page 145.
Our special guest today is Dr. Hill, a psychologist. She's going to help people resolve conflicts that arise around issues of personal space. First, she'll be talking with Dan and Jason, two roommates from the University of Texas who share an on-campus apartment. Welcome, Dr. Hill, and welcome, Dan and Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, thanks.
So, Dan and Jason, you two have been friends a long time?
Yeah, we've been friends since middle school. Since we both got accepted at UT, we decided to room together.
That was our first mistake.
That's a pretty strong reaction. Why don't you tell us about the problem?
Well, even though we were friends, we'd never lived together, so I didn't realize that Dan would consider the whole apartment his domain. I mean, I knew he was kind of an extrovert, but I didn't think he'd have people over all the time, parties every night. There's always somebody coming over to the apartment. I don't have time to study or just to think, you know?
So, are you saying that if you had known that, you wouldn't have roomed with him?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Dan, do you have anything to add?
Right, well, I didn't come to college just to study. I came to meet people. Besides, I'm not just some party animal. Sometimes I have study groups over, and we just want to stay up all night talking about the stuff we learn in class.
If you want Dr. Hill to help us resolve the problem, maybe you should mention that while you were studying, you're also listening to music and making a lot of noise.
Okay, if you weren't hiding in your room studying all the time, you could come out and join the conversation.
Yikes. Okay. Well, obviously it's a good thing the two of you decided to seek help, since this kind of situation can not only cause living problems, but might also ruin your long friendship if they are not solved. Now, let's turn to the solutions. Have you thought about...
End of CD2. The program continues on the next CD.